also write in your book, Rand Paul, that you're against government intervention in the marketplace. Does that include regulating Wall Street?
Well, I think what we have to do is we have to be smart about regulations. We have to understand that certain regulations are necessary, but certain regulations end up getting onto the books that are injurious to the marketplace and simply add costs and don't help anyone. When the crisis came about a year and a half ago with the banking crisis, we added, 5,000 pages of regulations through the financial regulatory bill. But I think they missed the boat because a lot of us think that the crisis was created by government as well as the Federal Reserve having bad policy, basically, allowing interest rates to be kept below market interest rates created this housing boom. But in the end, with the financial regulations, we heaped on a lot of new regulations on local community banks when the problem was really government banks, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the Federal Reserve, that led to this housing boom and consequently to the housing bust.
So a lot of people say it was corporate greed and the lack of regulation that led to the economic meltdown, as you pointed out. Is it the banks that you blame for the crisis, or who do you blame?
I think when people say they blame greed, it's sort of a logical fallacy in the sense that it's an ad hominem argument. You're sort of criticizing people for wanting to make money. Did the bankers all of a sudden become greedy between 2002 and 2007? Or did something more systemic happen? Did the Federal Reserve keeping the interest rates at 0% lead to interest rates that were below the market? For example, let's say we have an economy and you live in a town and there are 10 home builders and next year there's 100 home builders. What would happen in a free market is that interest rates would be bid up, you would start to meet supply and demand, and then prices would fall and the economy would slow down again. But what happens if you keep interest rates at 0% year after year? You send the wrong signal to the home builder, and the home builders keep building and building, and we had a great deal of inflation in home prices, but it was all related to monetary policy. It was related to government policy that said, you know what, having 20% down is too hard on our people in the lower part of our socioeconomic ladder, so let's go ahead and say you don't need to have a down payment for a house anymore. These were all bad policies that led to this boom. Had nothing to do with greed. To argue greed caused it would be just argue something that would be a logical fallacy to say, well, guess what? Some people, all of a sudden, everybody in the mortgage brokerage business became greedy at once, and they never were greedy before. It really is, I think, ignores the argument and is not a very intelligent way to discuss it.
Well, the real quote-unquote victims are the hundreds of thousands of Americans who are facing foreclosures. What, if anything, do you think the government should do to help these people?
Well, the first thing the government should do is not create these housing bubbles. Government created this housing bubble, and so when you look and say we're in this severe recession, we have 10% unemployment, we have a great deal of suffering, we have people losing their homes, the first question you say, what did government do to get us into this fix in the beginning? To grow out of this will take a while. When you have a huge amount of inventory, basically all these vacant homes or foreclosed homes, until you sell them, you can't start rebuilding again. So really, we have a huge overabundance of homes. We have falling home prices. Ultimately, home prices fall to the extent where, in fact, it does help those who are the working poor, because if the average price of homes was $150,000 when we got into this mess, when the average price of homes is $75,000, you've helped a lot of people, not those who owned the homes, but those who are young and coming up and the working poor trying to find homes can get homes much more economically at $75,000 than they can at $150,000. So really, the economic slump, ultimately, people will come into it in a better way because they'll begin buying homes at a much lower price.